All right, welcome back to Relatively Conscious. My name is Antonio Brown.
Irvin Bryant
Shout out to the DJ for making our beat.
at DW Made That on social media.
And follow us on social media.
That's at Kinda Woke on Instagram and Twitter. Relatively Conscious everywhere else. Hit us with a like, share this video, enlighten your friends.
Gotcha. So this is our second graph for Black History Month. We're talking about basically the economic viewpoints of Black historical figures and the current Black political echelon. Is that great terminology there?
I'm well aware. I want to let the audience know I'm well aware that I look like a shadow, and that's because the camera's racist. Last week, the mic was being discriminating against Tony. Yes. They didn't want to hear his Black voice, and now they're trying to keep me down. So we're gonna fix another technical difficulty next week.
We're talking about basically. So up here is authoritarian, down here is libertarian, economic right, economic left, right? And the first thing I want to show though is, even though this graph has points all over the place, right? So AOC and the squad up here, you got Booker T. Washington and Ronald Reagan and Fred Hampton. The American political discussion is not this really spread out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're one country. We're very scared, as one can see when you look at like the previous election, when someone really steps out of the box and wants to do a different political ideology. We really hate that kind of thing.
Yeah, we pretty much stay into one little box. So let me show you what I mean by that. We're really only in this small box right here. So the furthest right would be Ronald Reagan. The furthest left you're looking at is probably furthest left with regulation. More regulation would be Bernie Sanders. The furthest left with the least amount of regulation would be Fred Hampton and the Black Panthers, who were genuine Marxist. There we go, genuine Marxist. And then the furthest like libertarian right you're actually going to see would be Calvin Coolidge. So think of the early 1920s when Wall Street was going off and nobody was looking. That's basically that, right? So
hold up.
Yes.
Pause. Okay.
Yes.
How are Bernie and Fred Hampton not in? I don't think they should be that close together, I guess, because Bernie's like, I'm a democratic socialist, but they should be in the same quadrant.
I don't think so. So Bernie Sanders' general economic philosophy calls for a lot more regulation than I think Fred Hampton would be okay with. So that's gun control, that's control on exactly wages and other things like that. I think more of a Fred Hampton and Huey P. Newton in the Black Panther Party would want the government to be less involved in what they do economically on a community scale, basically. And that allows the people, as Fred Hampton would say, to make their own rules and what they want to happen.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but it's just really hard to imagine a Marxist, who believes in the redistribution of wealth, to have any kind of to be in any libertarian side of a line, because the state does have to assume the majority of power, even if it's not like, even if Bernie's more authoritarian than the Panthers, I still don't get how, okay, we should be able to have guns and, you should leave Black people alone. Great. But you still want to control commerce altogether. They're Maoists. So they believe in big government.
Yeah. That's once the socialist world is built. Do I think in the time being before that, so in the world that Fred Hampton was operating in, the economic arguments he was making to get to the socialist world were much more libertarian than arguments that Bernie Sanders would be making, right? So in Chicago in 1969, Fred Hampton's arguments for what should be going on economically are much more libertarian and have much less government control than Bernie Sanders' arguments in Vermont in 1969. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But the main thing I want to point out basically that when we have our economical conversations and AOC and Mitt Romney or Josh Hawley seem extremely far apart, they're not that far apart. They're all based in the same square. You know, we're all basically talking about the same thing, maybe a couple tweaks here and there. So that's the main thing I want to get to. So let's go back to the first graph. And what do you want to? What's most interesting to you off bat?
Let's just start off with the fun stuff. My man said Malcolm X is on
Yeah,
the libertarian left. Explain.
yeah. So Malcolm X belief economically, especially in like in Harlem, was the community should be allowed to build for itself. There should be very little government regulation or control over the movement of commerce within the Black communities, right? Uh, there should be very little of them sticking their nose in what we do, right? So if we want to buy from Black textile workers, right? If we want to build our own factories, if we want to make our own clothes and sell our own clothes, the government shouldn't be forcing us to get a certificate here, get a license there, and pretty much stopping us from doing what we want to do to make our community function very well. And that's sort of what Booker T. Washington also believes. So Dr. Jones, our African American Studies professor at Prairie A&M.
James T. Jones, his whole name.
Yeah, Dr. James T. Jones, our African American Studies professor at Prairie A&M University. Tell us, Washington, Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey are within the Washingtonian belief of economics. It says on the same plane, but on different sides. Booker T. Washington's belief are much more libertarian right in today's standards, but they're still the same ideal. You know, at Tuskegee, we're going to cut down our own trees, build our own universities, teach our own students. They're going to go and become the carpenters, the engineers in the Black communities. They shouldn't have to take some silly tests to get some certificate to allow them to work, because that allows racism to come into play.
Okay, so we got some Black libertarians. Now, I don't understand how X and T, based on what you just said, how they're so different.
Yeah, the difference is going to be when it comes to oversight and how black trade workers are governed. Malcolm X will argue that maybe the government should do more in giving us more money to Prairie A&M University so they can spit out more engineers, right? But he's not going to make a hard argument that there shouldn't be a test to become an electrician.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's bounce over to the some white people.
Yes.
We only have white people, and if you don't know, the white text means white people generally.
Yes.
I see AOC in the squad are white, and I disagree, but that's neither here nor there. We have an entire quadrant that is whites only. We have a segregated quadrant on the graph.
Yes.
Explain.
So really, I could have put Clarence Thomas up there in that quadrant. However, he's a Supreme Court judge, so what he believes economically is
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. There are some right-leaning economists. Most of us wouldn't know their names, so they're not very famous.
Glenn Lowry.
Yes, but I think he's more like Romney. He's more so closer to the middle. And the rest of them you've probably never heard of. Though they get a lot of play on PragerU. The rest, most Black people don't know who they are, But in this quadrant, right? So Mitt Romney is pretty much the middle, so he's arguing for like real basic right-wing ideals, less taxes, less government oversight, some corporate welfare here and there. Josh Hawley, same type of deal. Though I think he's a little more authoritarian because he wants more control over the internet, because he has a persecution complex about what Twitter and Facebook are doing to conservatives. We already had a discussion about that. But Ronald Reagan would be way more right-leaning in his economics than your average senator today. I think most of the Republicans have tamed since the Republican Party of the Reagan era. So
what does this quadrant mean? Like, you put them in orientation towards each other, but I mean, like, what does this mean for how they run the government, how they run, their policies, but what kind of laws they would write?
Yeah, so this quadrant basically you're looking at government control over losing low taxes, very little control over Wall Street, very little control over monopolies. Disney and Comcast and AT&T can do what they want. Very little control over wage regulation. Minimum wage is a an ideal that most of them just allowed to happen, but they really, if they could, they would repeal the minimum wage as a whole. They believe that you should pay for college. Forgiving student loan debt wouldn't be an option to them. And then economically, you're also looking at if there's a recession, they want to give the bare minimum of money to people because they believe giving people money makes them lazy, right? So this is the pull yourself up by the bootstraps quadrant, right? So whenever you hear somebody say that, this is the quadrant you should think of them being in. This is the ideal that you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and the only thing the government should have control over is allowing churches and religious organizations to discriminate as they see fit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the last section. Let's start with the outlier, AOC and the squad. What's really going on there?
Yeah, so, and I have them so high up, but again, at the other graph, you'll see that they're not that far out.
Right, yeah, they're not that far away, but they are the farthest.
Yeah, they're the farthest, right? So here you're seeing like they'll make an argument that we should have an assault weapons ban, right? So they'll make an argument that a regular human being, a regular average citizen should own assault weapons. They'll make an argument for a $15 minimum wage. They'll make an argument that Walmart should be broken up, Facebook should be broken up, that we have too many monopolies, right? Government should provide free college education, right? And then the government should provide free healthcare. You know, a much bigger idea of what the government should do in the life of an average everyday citizen, right? But they also believe the government should stop giving out so many tax breaks to corporations and should regulate them into acting in their worldview. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What is JP?
That's Joe Biden. Joe Biden is pretty much he believes in way less regulation, right? And I put him in pretty much a center of the party. That's why I have him there. The average Black millennial is going to be a little more left than he is, but I think more left than the average Black boomer. So your parents and my parents are Generation X. He's way more liberal in his thinking than they are. He's about the same as Barack Obama, though a little more left. But I also think that he's way out of step with AOC, you know, in the squad. A lot of things they argue for, I don't think he even would consider. He may give it his ear, but I don't think he gives any really serious consideration.
So yeah, let's get into the acronyms listed on the left.
Yeah, so we have your average Black boomer, right? So what's going to be funny is that most of your average Black boomers are going to make the same arguments you hear Malcolm X make. Black people need to get a trade, you know, get an education, build a business in their community, and then use that money from that business to build up their community. Less concerned with the minimum wage, less concerned with healthcare, more concerned with what you're going to do as a young Black person going to college, what you're going to do to make some money and make a difference. It's much more on the individual level than it is caring about the government control. Then you have your average Black millennial, so you and me, much more concerned with government healthcare. I think both of us, we had a discussion about it. We fall in the camp of believing that it's something the government should look to do, providing healthcare. Both of us probably agree there should probably be a $50 minimum wage. Both of us probably agree that Walmart and Amazon are too big. Both of us are much more weary of going to war than our parents' generation was. But we are still more liberal than the Congressional Black Caucus. We're more liberal than Al Green or Sheila Jackson Lee or people like that. You know, I think most Black millennials believe in reparations and believing in such a strong stance that if they were in Congress, that would be the first thing they would do. Your average Black Gen Zer who are much more aligned with the AOC and the squad. It's kind of hard to when you get to generations and breaking those lines, but there is a distinct difference in how we think of the world and how they think of the world. And their thought process of the world is much more liberal than ours. I think growing up, we had conversations about whether or not gay marriage should be a thing. Should the government allow it? You know, I don't think your average Black Gen Z ever thought of it any other way. I don't think your average Gen Z ever thought that, ever considered the ideal that the government shouldn't do healthcare. It's just to them, it's like, why don't we do that? It doesn't make sense, Um, they don't understand the idea of they don't see why we allow Amazon to happen in the first place, so a very different point of view.
And now we got the people on the who are not on the map at all. It's not a legend, I don't think, on the right side.
No, it's a where would you put them? Well, the reason is I put them there because they can't be placed.
Oh, well, look at that. It was a trick question.
Because like Garvey, I don't know where to put him. He argues in the Washingtonian vein, but I don't know if that makes him libertarian, if that makes him... He also was willing to work with the KKK to make a Black separate state. He believed that we should move to Liberia and make have us make a country over there. We should just leave America as a whole. There's a piece where he argues that that Black people should look to the white man as how he works with his hands and builds something of worth of wealth. Therefore, he's considered to be a man worth respecting. And because Black people haven't built anything, therefore the government, the world does not see us as worth respecting. So we should do the same thing and go to Liberia and build a country. I don't know where that fits in today's discussion.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's foreign almost, which is why when a lot of people start bringing up Garvey's name and they're talking about politics or economics, I get very weird about what exactly they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So he never got to the stage where he would have to form like real policy or give a perspective on what the state, the policy beyond race is, because he had to race was the first thing to overcome.
Yeah,
and then race was far more tangible. And so with the 100% like impassable obstacle of race throughout the world, he had a lot on his hands that he never actually got to accomplish before he could actually, start talking about left, right, authoritarian or whatever.
Marcus Garvey's operating in a world where Calvin Coolidge is president. And so you see how far he is out of the square. The 1920s and the way he thought of economics, it's just so foreign to us that when we start talking about what Garvey wanted to do and what Du Bois wanted to do in the 1920s, I don't think we have anywhere to really understand it as a worldview. Other than that, it was a crazy time. The government was very little involved, and you could pretty much act with impunity, basically.
Garvey can't be placed because he was limited by the obstacle of race and the fact that Black people are the quote unquote rich of the earth, blah 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 blah. Very hard times.
Yes.
Farrakhan, Trump, and Dr. Umar Johnson, that's his first name. But Dr. Umar Johnson are one, contemporary people. They're alive right now.
Yes.
And two, it's not that they are limited by any particular social construct that doesn't allow them to place themselves on the map, right? It's not that they don't have the time or the space to do so. They have nothing but that, in fact, because they got massive platforms.
Yes.
They're I'm about to say ideologues, but they're low on the ideology when it comes to economics. They're populist demagogues, and they play to the crowd. They tickle the ear, and they say racially abrasive things that soothe one side, but are rough to another side. Racial views. So if you on a previous graph would have thought that integration was the option, then it would be abrasive to you. If you would think that separation of the races, separatism, was the solution to racial disharmony, then it would be soothing to you to hear their arguments. And either way, again, it's not because that they can only or do only focus on race, but it's that's the only constant. Like if I'm a demagogue and my whole goal is racial disharmony, a separation of the races, which all of these three, in one way or another, is their shtick, then I don't really need to be stable or to have any real idea about economics and whether or not the government should control something, whether or not free participation in the market, whether or not we should be allowing gay people to get married. Like those are really tertiary ideals when I'm trumpeting a point of view that is so far out on the social level, we don't even get to talk, or no one's really focusing on this kind of stuff, because Farrakhan, Trump, and Umar Johnson have all said things that have been all over the map. So if you're talking about starting and waging a trade war that is hard authoritarian left, or
technically
it's authoritarian. I can't. But what side is it on? I don't know.
It's authoritarian bonkers, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Trade war really it's not a logical. I guess it's authoritarian right because it's on the nationalist tip.
Yeah.
So Trump will do that one day, and then he'll want to unleash and unshackle coal on another day, which is libertarian right.
Yes.
Right. So, it doesn't quite make sense. Trump day to day. Farrakhan is the same way, where he would like to heavily invest the government's funds in a kind of reparation sort of way to economically liberate Black people, which is clearly on the left. But then, based on the cultish Nation of Islam rhetoric about life in general and the way people ought to conduct themselves, there's a lot of that fascist total control of society that is definitely authoritarian right. So we just jump from two ends of the spectrum there, and Umar does pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Point being, don't trust these people. They don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they have a clear stance on race, but not much else.
Yeah. Also, my critique is that they're just intellectually dishonest. I don't know, because I want to be more forgiving when it comes to economics. A lot of people, it's a boring subject that for a lot of people can put you to sleep. But I feel as you got to understand what you're talking about and how does that work in the same world. And so, Farrakhan is authoritarian left in how he believes in reparations, but also be libertarian left in how he believes the government should have very little discussion of what Black people do with their money. He's also what's called pro-life, so that'd be a very authoritarian right. But he also believes, was he okay with a trade war? I don't know. What's his belief in America's policies in the Middle East? And I know his thought process will say something along the lines of that. It's America trying to gain control and it's white people, doing something like that. But like, what does he believe economically? What does that mean? What's his thought process on OPEC? I have no idea what that is. And so I don't know where he places himself. And, Umar does the same thing. And Trump, when he argued for the $2,000 checks, that is very much authoritarian left. That is along the lines of AOC, But then he argues that coal should be free, as you said, or he argues that we should have very little regulation. That's libertarian rights,
school choice, stuff like that.
Yeah, school choice. So I don't know what to do with that. At least one thing about Ronald Reagan, they say the devil I know where he still don't stump it, So if you came to him with anything that was outside of his purview, you knew what he was going to say about it. If you came to Trump and told him something, I don't know what he's going to say. Only thing I know is that if Fox News cool with it, then he may be cool with it. But then again, Fox News would not be cool with $2,000 checks if Obama was president. That's the reason why. I want to do this map so well is that to get to the fine point of details. I think we often talk about Black money and Black business and what we're going to do about the Black dollar and all these other things. I think we find it frustrating, especially Gen Zers. I think your average Gen Zer is probably more left because of out of frustration of what's going on with the boomers and what's going on with us in the Congressional Black Caucus. And I think they're trying. They see a world that doesn't make sense to them. America has all this money, but if you get cancer, it may be better to die than to beat it because you may be bankrupt afterwards. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. America spending, a bunch of money on tanks that sit in the field, but yet you can barely get abortion in the state of Missouri, so that doesn't make sense to me either. Tuskegee is an institute that, puts out, or Prairie View University, institute that puts out, hundreds of Black engineers every year. But the wealth of the Black community stays the same, or is stagnant, and it's a terrifying fact. Our generation, you are my generation, we're the first generation to have less money than our parents, when we die.
Oh, yeah, look at this real quick. No hot water, no toilets, no lights, but a rover is on Mars. Gil Scott Heron, but I paraphrased it.
Yeah. So, your average Gen Zer, I think they Black Gen Zer, by the way, I think they're really confused about what's the priorities. And I think they're confused because politicians lie. And not only do they lie, they're intellectually dishonest. Because Josh Hawley would say one thing one day and then say another thing the other day. And so what does that even mean?
By the way, they're called Zoomers. They made that up. That's not me.
No, I refuse.
What? You got boomers on here. You can't do Zoomers?
I guess Zoomers.
Yeah, Gen Z. It's stupid, but they're stupid.
But
I get to do that. I get to say that.
Yeah, but one thing I really thought about was the fact that in 2014, when in 2012, Barack Obama came out as a pro marriage equality candidate. That was a huge thing.
Yes.
But for somebody born in the year 2000, they're 14 years old. It didn't make any sense to them why Barack Obama wasn't a pro marriage equality candidate from the beginning. Even the discussion about abortion is over and done with by the time they come around. People are where they are, basically. Nobody's moving on that discussion. Where people stand. That's pretty much it. And I think if you're a Zoomer, as they say, and you're Black, more than likely going to be probably pro-choice.
The question is where do you lie? So if I'm gonna put myself, honestly, I believe in government regulation. I'm one of those people,
Yeah.
Authoritarian left. I'm in the red zone. Just because, without regulation, a lot of things, when you have a segmented society, whether it be on race or class, those in power are really ready to abuse that power to do all kind of wild stuff. And without real rules and regulations to stop them, and without people having enough power in this world, capital, money, to stop them, I like to have some regulations to say, you can't build a bridge that way. You can't build a house that way. You gotta do the wiring like X, so my house doesn't catch on fire. And I'm broke, so the invisible hand of the market would not save me because I only have the low rent choice, right? And then of course, I like economic assistance programs and things like that, scholarships. That's all lefty stuff.
Yeah, I find myself between X and Joe Biden, somewhere between that range. But my main argument is that we have corporate welfare, and it's gotta stop. So many companies that aren't very good continue to exist because of corporate welfare. Like Walmart should have went broke a lot faster because we all hate going there. So why are they making so much money? And it's because they get so many tax cuts and so many other things. But I do believe it's got to be much more regulation when it comes to the corporate side. But individually, if you want to go to school and become an electrician, I think the government should give you, also I believe in unions, which is also on your authoritarian left. But I believe communities can decide what they want to do with their money and what business they want to be there. All right. My name is Antonio Brown.
Irvin Bryant.
Peace.